It's okay, at least our two asses are here. Damn.
It's 4:20.
I know. Oh well. Well, we'll just run it. It'll probably be like an hour or less, so you could just listen. Alright, sweet. Alright, hello. I'm gonna go ahead and be teaching the Storyboard Pro tutorial. If you've never used Storyboard Pro before, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the basics of how to use it and just learn a little bit more about storyboarding if that's something you're interested in. If you're looking to go into any kind of pre-production, it's definitely an important thing to learn. Let me go ahead and kick off the bot here. Alright, there we go. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go through the slideshow just to tell you a little bit about storyboarding. Nothing complicated here. But yeah, what is storyboarding? It's the visual outline for a film or a scene. It's frequently used in animation films and games. I'll be going over all three of them, at least, you know, for television films, television animation, live action films and animated films, and video games as well. But storyboards are essentially what they are is a series of images, kind of think like a comic strip or something, to help construct the overall narrative. It can either be followed like super closely to the dot, like in the cases of television, due to the shorter productions, or sometimes it can be also treated more loosely and it gives a lot of more reign for the director to make his own decisions, like live action films. But yeah, if you're interested in doing storyboarding, you might be interested in a career in becoming a storyboard artist. They're the ones usually responsible in creating storyboards, and they usually are within the pre-production phase. Most times they work closely with the director and the writers to help draw out the narrative as it may appear on the screen. There's some productions that are storyboard based and some that are like script based. What that means basically is that for example, you may know some like television shows like, I believe there's one like, what was it? I think it was Regular Show I'm thinking about. So Regular Show, for example, on Cartoon Network, they're actually done by storyboards. So instead of writing out the script first and then storyboarding out the sequence, what they would go ahead and do is ask the storyboard artist to basically come up with funny plots and draw them out, and use that to determine what the episode's going to be about. So there's different ways productions can run. It kind of is super dependent on the studio themselves and what the director wants. But yeah, that's for anyone who's interested in becoming a storyboard artist, that's kind of the job you mostly do. And then we're going to be go ahead and using Storyboard Pro today. It's made by Toon Boom. It's currently on the Pro 20 edition. And it's generally the industry choice of storyboarding, though it's not the only one you can use. You can also use things like Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint. You can even use Adobe Animate. There's a lot of different options for you. You can even still do it on paper if you want, though it's kind of being phased out now, though it was more common, you know, even a couple of years ago. But Storyboard Pro is really great if you want to especially work with Toon Boom Harmony, which is an animation software that does a lot of cool like tweening and stuff, or if you want to work with Final Draft, which is a script writing software, and it's generally also an industry choice in script writing. So yeah, if you're interested, just go ahead and click on the link to download, or you could type in Storyboard Pro. There's a free trial for up to 21 days. You don't have to add in a credit card. Or if you're interested in learning it long term, I recommend buying the student edition version. If you verify with them your student ID or your student email, you're able to get it for $10 a month instead of the usual monthly subscription price. But yeah, it's 100% worth it. It's also available at the graphic labs as well. So you can also use it at our school on campus too. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to Storyboard Pro. Let me go ahead and change screens. But yeah. And let me just make sure it's all streaming correctly. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. So this is a project file that I have here. Let me go ahead and save this as just a test file export. And I'll go ahead and leave it in the chat if you'd like to use it. Let me see. Did it save here? It should have. Okay, there it is. So this should work just fine. If you use the test file export, I'll go ahead and leave it also in the slides later when I post up the slides after the end of the presentation. If you want to go ahead and just use that to mess around with, it's going to be a great starting point if you're just interested in kind of just the general basics of what storyboarding is. So I have 3 layers here, or on top of the BG layer. I have one called animation, or this also can apply to games as well. This one is very loose, as you can see, and it's generally drawn not on character model or anything. It's more focused on just getting a flow, and it's just having the readability be there, but not without being very particular about every single point in line. So if you're interested in doing something for feature or games, because games usually have very cinematic type sequences usually when they do storyboarding, because you don't have to storyboard a game usually unless you have cutscenes. So this is kind of what I would recommend for anyone who wants to do feature film. Focus on getting big shapes in here and just focus on experimenting with shots and telling a very clear story with different interesting layouts and such. But yeah, this is just a scene copied from The Little Mermaid. I'm gonna go ahead and into the TV web. Afterwards, I'll start going into the UI. But I have here also a TV version. Hey, Brianna.
Hello.
But yeah, I have here a TV version. So this is for anyone who's interested in doing TV animation. TV animation is a lot more different compared to feature animation, really, because it's more focused, particularly because generally we outsource our animations to studios over, particularly in South Korea, Canada, China. Usually our animation is not done in-house. So it's important for the storyboard artists here in the US to have very clear lines so that they know where to draw whenever they're drawing it or messing with a model, knowing where to place it exactly and it being extremely clear as possible. Because what may be easy to tell someone who's within the same studio as you may not be so easy to have that translate over in another country at another studio. So it's important to be as clear as possible and follow the character models. This is just a very loose one done based off Marge Simpson from one of the Simpsons episodes, but yeah, you can go ahead and when you do TV animation, I recommend keeping it more on the tighter side, at least for your final product. Obviously you can start loose, but you definitely want to hone in on exactly where everything's going to be and try to be exact, because they will be following this to a T compared to feature animation or game cinematics, in which generally the animators have a lot more leniency, and all the other different artists who are more involved in the production have a lot more leniency on how they may want to frame this, change it up, etc. And then also we have live action. I'm not sure how many people would be interested in live action, but in case you are, it's more, live action is generally focused less on creating a bunch of different shots, or I shouldn't say that, it's definitely a lot less animated looking, and it's usually focused more on being realistic. A lot of times they even have shading included. They kind of appear almost like a graphic novel in a sense, so if you ever see those old comic books in black and white, that's what a lot of them generally resemble. They usually have a lot of arrows pointing to where they're looking or turning. And usually it's kind of similar to feature animation, since usually the director has a lot of discrepancy on how the shots may change over time, especially when they get down to filming. A lot of things usually change by then at that point. So storyboarding is more a looser way for the director to just get a feel for what kind of shots they may want, and then they can go ahead and change that later if they wish while working with the camera. So it's definitely interesting to see in some ways, yeah, live action and feature animation is a lot more alike than TV animation and feature animation, so it's something good to keep in mind. But if you want to just go ahead and just like look at these and just like see them for like kind of reference, yeah, you can just go ahead and turn on to get into the UI. You can turn on the little I button here, and it just kind of like the I button in most programs. You can just click it on and off and look at it. And we're going to go ahead and make a new panel. This is just going to be our test panel. So if you want to make a new panel, there's a couple ways to do it. First of all, you can go into your storyboard tab. If you want, you can go ahead and click new and then hover over to new panel. You can see there's also a shortcut assigned to it, so if you also want, you can just go ahead and click P and it'll automatically create it. Another thing to note about it too is that it creates a singular sequence for you. If you want to create a new sequence, let's say you have like multiple shots within an episode or within a movie you're creating that are like from completely different scenes, you might want to separate them via sequences, and you can go over to new again under storyboard and go to new sequence. But for now, let's just keep everything in the same sequence for, you know, clarity's sake and less messing around and worrying about it. But if you are interested, just new sequence, and you'll see how it's separated by this white border. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that. So you have disposable tools at your hand on the left hand side. The ones that you're going to be using the most I'll be going over, but there are a variety of tools that are built into Storyboard Pro that can be messed around with, including their 3D features. They also have like, you can add models within there too as well. There's also perspective tools you can use too. And you can also even mess with cameras and have the camera dynamically move around the scene. But I think we're going to keep it super simple to how they did storyboarding back in the day, which is just a piece of paper you're going to draw on top of. But now with more digital tools. So if you go on the left hand side here, there's going to be this arrow, and if you hover over it, it's going to say select. You can also click Alt-S. But you can also, if you right click it, you can edit what kind of tool these are, but we're just going to go ahead and use, just click it here by the arrow and select. There's select by color. You're probably never going to need that. There's also cutter. You're probably never going to need that. So you're just going to want to stick to select. And you can just use that to select anything that's in the scene and pick it up. So all the lines that you're going to be creating, unless you really want to use a raster layer, it's going to be vector based. And if it's going to be vector based, then that means you can move the lines and size them up and down, rotate them, mess with them, and they'll generally be consistent because they're mathematically calculated ahead of time versus raster, which is more pixels on the screen. But yeah, so you can use this to select it. So if I go ahead and click on the vector brush tool here, you're going to see the tool properties on your right hand side has changed, and it's going to show you a variety of brushes, maximum size for the brush, and so on and so forth. A couple more tools like snapping behind and draw behind, but autofill. But yeah, we're just going to stick to the basics. So I have my solid brush one, and maximum size is like 13. So if I go ahead and draw a circle, you know, with like maybe a little smiley face, and then I go ahead to this arrow here, I can just go ahead and select around it, and I can now size things up by holding onto the little point at the side here. And if you want to make it so that it like doesn't like, you know, deform a bunch, unless that's your thing, you can hold down shift and then it'll just equally size or size down things as you wish. You can also, if you go a little bit past these points and see this little circle that's kind of like with arrows going around, that's the rotating tool. So you can just use that to go ahead and rotate. Also too, if there's like other things you want to do, let's say you want to flip the image, you can right click anything you selected, and then you can go ahead and go to arrange or transform in this case, and you can do flip horizontal. So yeah, right click, transform, flip horizontal, or you can also do it vertically as well too. There's also shortcuts for those too. It's in this case it's Alt H. If you're on Windows, I don't know if you're a Mac user, to be honest. I've never used Storyboard Pro on a Mac, but There's different options for that. But yeah. Alright, so you can just click out when you're done using the select tool. But as you can see, because we're on a vector layer, everything's super consistent, so you're not going to lose the quality as you go up or down, which is really nice, honestly. And I personally think the vector brush in Storyboard Pro works a lot better than something like Illustrator or Adobe Animate. It's a lot smoother and responds very quickly. Storyboard Pro can be a little tough on your computer depending on your specs, but it should generally work pretty well as long as you're careful with your layer sizes. You shouldn't be having an issue with the amount of disk space you have. But that's just something as like a heads up. If you want to go ahead and delete, pretty straightforward, just click the erase button. It's kind of the same like the brush. If you use Photoshop or any of the equivalent, it's kind of the same idea. You can just use that to erase your drawing. But like I said, the nice thing too is that you can select things and like just click delete. So yeah, if you want to just click it and then click the delete, or not backspace, I'm sorry. If you want to click it, right click it, and should be here, maybe not. Oh, okay, maybe not. So you might have to just go ahead and delete it. My bad. I thought I remember there was a shortcut way to do it. But yeah. Besides, you also have a pencil tool here. The pencil tool is also just great if you want to like pull down some sketches. It's also vector based. It's a lot lighter. There's like centerline smoothing. You can go ahead and mess with it. There's different kinds of pencils built in. You can also like download them off the internet, or you can also like adjust these settings of these if you want to like make your own kind of brush. But yeah, these are how the brushes look like. They're a lot like thinner and a lot softer looking, so they're definitely great if you're like trying to like put down as much as you can as fast as possible. I would definitely wait on the pen, unless there's like a kind of pen you really like using for sketching. But yeah, you can kind of see the difference pretty quickly, even in just the softness. So yeah, you can go ahead and use the pencil tool if you want, or the brush. Yeah, so we went over the pencil and brush and the erase. So there's obviously like a text here. Again, everything is under your tool properties color section. For some reason, by the way, if you don't see your tool properties color selection, you could literally just go to view and it will, yeah, you could go to, actually, sorry, you could go to Windows, and if you want something that's like, if you want to like manage your workspace or open up something, like in this case it's going to be tool properties, you can just go under Windows and click on it if you don't see it, and then drop it as you please. It's a pretty flexible layout. Even the default layout works really well. I think it's personally very usable compared to like some programs out there. But yeah. Oh, and also if you want to get around the screen, I forgot to mention that, you can use your, you can just point your mouse at a certain point and then just start scrolling over. And that's how you can kind of scroll around, move around. But if you want to move around and pan, you want to go ahead and click on this. So if you see it, it's probably going to show you a zoom button, which is super useful. You can, zoom in, go to tool properties, or zoom out. But I like to use the scrolling and the hand personally. So if I go to hand, by clicking on the arrow, looks like a Mickey Mouse glove, you can just use that to pan around and zoom in, zoom out as you please. But there are benefits to the zoom. You can also like, I think there was like a thing where you can like, it's a little bit more like incremental rather than just like scrolling. So if you need like a more like straightforward way to zoom in and out of a drawing, it's also useful. But it really depends on like what you're working with. Other things too as well, just kind of similar to Photoshop, there's a paint tool. If you, yeah, make sure you're on paint, not paint unpainted or unpaint. So, and then you can go ahead, there should be a color section down here. This applies to all the tools that you're working with before, but to show you here, you can just like drop some color down. And it's generally good at figuring out where the lines are, even if they're not per se perfect. Like, if I were to, let me go ahead and, like, let's say it looks like that. And then, I don't know. Well, basically, what it's kind of, oh, I guess it was, yeah, I forgot it was like this, so. Like, oh, okay, I guess it doesn't work like that. Okay, my bad. Basically, if you're gonna be drawing stuff, make sure it's, never mind my last advice. Just make sure you go ahead and clean things up a little bit, just so there's no lines being lost. I forgot I did this, but yeah, because Storyboard Pro has changed a couple times over the years, but as long as your lines are generally pretty, like, clean, then just filling it in should just be a matter. Yeah, it's always funky. Whoops. There we go. It will be able to drop it in pretty nicely without much issues. You won't get any of those, like, weird, like outside pieces that you normally have problems with. I think I'm thinking of the vector based thing, that's why. But yeah, you just want to make sure your lines are clean, and you can go ahead and use the paint bucket tool and just select the color and fill it in. So yeah, if you're looking to do whatever you want, here you go. There you go. So you can do like some fun shading stuff with that too as well. If you're doing storyboards, you're probably not going to be using a whole lot of color, except maybe like key colors, or doing like gray for the backgrounds, or any like background person. But if, you know, for example, some people use Storyboard Pro as like an animation tool instead, so there are like possibilities with that as well. And then maybe you want to go ahead and use the color here. It's up to you really, but generally everyone sticks to black and white because it's the easiest to work with, and usually there's someone else who has the job of doing like color scripts. So I'm gonna go ahead and on the layer we're working on, it's called A, you can go ahead and just click the delete button or the trash button if you've drawn on it. And if you want to create a new layer, you just go ahead and click on the triangle, square, circle button down here at the bottom left of this like layer panel. If you also go ahead and right click that thing, if you want to make like a raster file or a raster drawing or a bitmap layer, you can as well. And you notice it's kind of responds more like drawing like on Photoshop if you're not using vector lines. But if you select it, and let's say do that, or let's do that, and then do that, and just kind of, it's basically not very good quality. You can kind of tell like it looks really, really bad. So I would recommend sticking to vectors. I used to be very much a hardcore bitmap raster drawing person, and I kind of found out with Storyboard Pro you're really better off working with the vectors, because it really, even if I draw this ball, if I shrink it down, it still doesn't look as bad as the other one did. It's a little blurry, but that's because of the image size per se, but it's still not as bad as the other one. It's still a lot clearer, and you can still always zoom in and tell that the lines are pretty good quality compared to the raster. So yeah, I recommend using vectors in this case. Other tools too, just more miscellaneous stuff. Oh, yeah, I think I mentioned the text one too. Just type, change the properties. Pretty straightforward there. Let's see, you could also go into the rectangle tool, and then change it to rectangle, ellipse, line, or polyline. This is great too if you're like looking to do like, if you want to like build a house quickly or something, or you want like a box. If you want something to just help you speed things along the way. So This is kind of similar to a lot of like those poly lines stuff you can see like in Illustrator and stuff. You know, it kind of works the same idea. You're probably not going to want to use this unless you're trying to follow something to a T. But usually there's a lot of better ways to also deal with that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this layer again. So now I'm just going to create a new vector layer on top. And we're going to go ahead and switch over to, I'm going to go back to the first panel here. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the panel section. So the panel section is pretty unique. If you're looking to work with a script, this is super essential. If you're not really, or I don't know, you're just kind of more of a free thrower, or you prefer to just keep it down on paper or whatever have you, you may not find it as useful. But I want to show you it in case you are interested in using it. It's super great too if you're going to be working with audio at some point. But here, as you can see, it says our scene. We're in scene 1. Like I said, every new sequence will create a new scene, so... Or, sorry, not a new sequence, I'm sorry. If a new scene will create one. I mentioned it wrong, yeah. I mixed up the two words. So yeah, if you want to create a new scene, click new scene. If you want a new sequence, those are completely separate things. I apologize, but yeah. We're currently on scene 1 right now, and we're on panel 1. And the duration is by default at 24 frames, because 24 frames is generally the default FPS for animation, which is what Storyboard Pro mostly is used for. But you can always go change this in the settings if you want, but I'm going to keep it the same because it works out for me. And if you look here, this is like about voice annotations and such. You can also see selection information here, but we're going to ignore this for now. We can go ahead and look at dialogue, action notes, slugging, and notes. These are all aspects of script writing. If you've never really written a script before, this might not make too much sense, but I will go ahead and explain what they are, and you can go ahead and use them if you want when you work on your own storyboards. So dialogue is just essentially dialogue, something that your character is saying. Here I have Fred saying, "Let's see if this will work." I kind of did it like based on how it may look like in a script. So it's the full name Fred, and then this is his dialogue down here. I have action notes. Action notes are describing what is happening on screen, what action is literally happening. It's very straightforward. It's basically used for the crew in order to see like what the actor or the character in this case is doing. So here I have Fred looks down at the trap he just made, using a series of wires and twigs. So if we're thinking Scooby-Doo, he's looking down at this trap that he's just made. You know, maybe he's like thinking or meandering over it. So I just wanted to kind of quickly describe what he was looking at, and that quickly tells everyone who's reading the script what he's doing, and then it kind of provides some explanation for the storyboard too, the storyboard panel. Slugging, you don't most times you're not going to always need slugging, but just to tell you what it is, slugging is for any important information that's in the script. So if you have something that needs, it's usually more of a script writing thing than something you have to really pay attention to in storyboarding, but if the director or scriptwriter or yourself writes something about like, you know, there's something important in the scene that needs to be made clear, that may not be able to be described in the action notes or the dialogue, you might write it in slugging. But like I said, that's not super common. And then we also have notes. Notes are just notes. Basically, if you have any notes about the scene, or your director, screenwriter, etc. has some notes about it, you can just write them here. So here I wrote, "Try messing with perspective." Yeah. So you can just write any notes you have about it. It's super useful. I think it's a lot easier than just trying to write notes like in a notebook or notepad or whatever. So these are kind of the 4 areas you can mess with too. And another cool thing too is within these sections you can add captions. And you can delete them. Basically if you want they're essentially just if you want to add captions to your storyboard sequence, you can add them in there. But we're not going to mess with that too either. It's probably simpler to keep it to just the visuals for now. And it's more recommended you focus more on what the visuals are telling for the story, rather than what's in the script. So this is the storyboard section that's right next to panel. Here you can literally just import your script and use that to copy paste into the panels. It's super useful too. You can, for example, even create a project if you go to File, New from Final Draft. Final Draft isn't free, unfortunately, and it doesn't really seem to be able to import from other scriptwriting softwares like Writer's Duet or Trelby or any one of those. But you can always just copy and paste it here and just, kind of use this as a way to quickly transfer over. Storyboard Pro is great because it's super intuitive and it's generally made to work as fast as possible rather than slowing you down with features, which is awesome for a software, honestly, especially for industry standard software. You can also go into your library too. It's next to Tool Properties Color, and there should just be, I don't even know if I have any. I might not have any. Okay, I guess I have some stuff, but there's different characters, actions, props you can look at and you can use if you want. I don't personally find them very useful, and if you are an artist, you probably will want to draw them on your own, but the 3D models can be useful. I don't have it downloaded, but Storyboard Pro does have 3D models that can be used for posing, so if you're struggling with a pose, you can use it and draw over it. But it's kind of similar to Clip Studio Paint, where they have their own 3D models that can be posed. It works very similarly like that. But, like I said, a lot of people don't generally use these. They're very useful, though, if you are working on a production that commonly uses a lot of assets. Like, if, for example, you have, a prop that you don't want to keep redrawing over and over again. I mean, you could just copy and paste it from the layer it came from, or you could just stick it in your library and use that to quickly drop stuff down. But it really is dependent on what kind of production you're working on, the timing, the speed of everything, and if you just want to draw it or not, But this can definitely speed up your process if you're looking for something like that. And then going back to Tool Properties Color, we're back here. Those are just the 4 panels that we had, or not 4 panels, the four tool sets we have, mostly at our disposal. I'm gonna go into just some other really quick things, and then maybe we could go ahead and do an example of storyboarding. But yeah, we have a section up here if you're interested in changing your workspace. That's super cool and actually works really well. I've personally used the overview, the horizontal workspace, the vertical workspace, and the pitch mode. Oh, and the PDF view. But there's different, if you can switch it. Let me bring it back down. You can get a timeline version of it, kind of like how most animation softwares look like. You could switch it here. You can go ahead and switch it to doing an overview. So if you have a lot of panels, you can use this to quickly look through. Super great for thumbnailing, by the way. And definitely will keep your shapes and your drawings very strong. They do take a little while to load in between, so that's a heads up. There's also, this is the horizontal workspace, so as you can see all the dialogue, action notes, slugging notes down here, and you'll just go through the thumbnails like this too. It's also a good one to use to draw on top of. Other things too, vertical version, kind of the same idea, but now vertical. Pitch mode, also it's really good too. Pitch mode is literally for pitching, per se, if you wanted to go ahead and pitch to your boss or to your team. The kind of art. This one's always a little weird to get out of. But, oops. Usually a way to escape it. There you go. Okay, so if you need to escape pitch mode, like I just forgot I had to do, you want to click on the little red door that's at the bottom. It should just say exit pitch mode. It's supposed to basically be a full screen version of it. And then there's also a PDF view version of it, which is probably what you're going to want to work with. It's also used for exporting. So if you're looking to put this on your portfolio, you can use this to export a PDF. You can add captions, if you have a captions list. There's like a couple settings options, force new page, full page, and then you can have different formats too. You can do, if you're going to be working with like generally American standards, you probably will want to either do the full page, or you can also do the overview as well, like the 4x3 or 8x10. Whatever is like easiest to view. If you ever want to work in anime productions, a lot of them generally work with the vertical Japanese format. That's usually the standard one there. But it's up to you how you want to export them. At the end of the day, it's less about how you export them and more about how strong your storyboards are in general. So, yeah, there's a lot of different information. There's a lot of different, options there are out there for you if you're interested in doing this kind of stuff and wanting to share it with other people. So it's super useful. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the default view just to make things easier. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of other tools here as well. I'm not going to go into per se, but if you're interested in doing sound clips and adding like, if you can, yeah, you can, I think it's like here. Yeah, you can import audio tracks. For example, if you want to like do syncing with music or with dialogue, you can add cameras and add keyframes. So if you're having a dynamic camera, there's a ton of different things you could do here, but I'm going to go ahead and just like leave it as this. And we're going to go ahead and create, go to storyboard, go to new, and then go to new scene. And now you can kind of see it's also, instead of highlighted with the white, like the sequences, it's going to be highlighted in black. So I'm on a new scene right now, so you can see my panel, scene 2, panel 1. And essentially what we're going to want to do is kind of see how to use Storyboard Pro like on a more practical level, because sometimes I think that's one of the harder things to get going. So just adjusting my canvas here. Now, I only showed you like the cropped off version. This is the 1920 by 1080. And basically you want to go ahead and just go to camera mask. This is what I recommend. It's up to personal preference, but at the bottom here you want to go to camera mask and unclick it. Yours might be on by default. If it is, you can just leave it at this, or if you want, you can just mess with it. There's other options too, like 4x3 area. 4x3 is generally used in television, but also pretty old television, so you're probably not going to be using it. You can do, what was this one again? 4x3 safe area. You can do titles. You can do field grid. You can also do like just what's the proportion grid too, if you're like trying to get the proportions right, or you want to do by the rule of thirds. There's a ton of different options here. You can even have, if you want to be fancy, you can add like the timeline. So it shows you the scene, panel, and the timing of everything. Yeah. But yeah, those are some of the basic stuff for setting it up. But I'm going to leave it to free draw. Okay, so if you essentially want to start drawing, yeah, go to your brush tool, as I said before. We're not going to go and sketch it because that would take too much time. So we just want to go ahead and just start drawing away. What kind of prompt should I go for? Does anyone have like a suggestion? Hatsune Miku concert. Got it. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and make a Hatsune Miku concert. So, we're gonna literally just work with these two layers that are given to us by default, but you can add as many layers as you want, and make them as fancy as you like. So let's go ahead and just create a BG background. So I'm trying to think what a Hatsune Miku concert would look like. Maybe like, oh, let me go back and reiterate. One thing I want to kind of recommend to everyone, you can use the opacity tool to lower the you know, the black of the pen, basically lower the strongness of the pen. But I wouldn't recommend that. It actually can slow things down for you, especially once you have like a million panels going. And if all the backgrounds are low opacity, it takes up more computing power. So it's better to just pick a lighter color. Like anything on these swatches honestly work great. Like this is probably usually fine. And you can always go ahead and like adjust things too if you need to. Like I said, these are all vector based, so it's not really difficult to like change the colors or anything. I think even if you, let me remind myself if this works. Select. Yeah, if I go ahead and select them, I can literally just change the color. So you can always go ahead and change them at any point, but right now I'm just going to keep them to this really, really light gray here. So let's go ahead and add some perspective here. So maybe I'm going to just go ahead and maybe add some of the walls here. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just kind of freestyling and kind of thinking what may go to storyboard. If you're working on your own storyboards, you'll have to do a lot of visual development by yourself. But if you're on a production, most times people have it for you. At least like an idea of what it is, so you're not completely working from scratch. But in this case, I will be working from scratch, so maybe just, I don't know, Hatsune Miku. Just kind of, like I said, the nice thing about storyboarding is that you don't have to commit too hard to anything you make. So you can just kind of go ham crazy, don't worry too much about making sure it's perfect or anything. And because you have this open canvas space, I probably should have done it like that myself, but you can go ahead and just like really draw as big as you want. And if you want to know how it looks like in the screen, you can cut it off here again. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and maybe just draw some people there. Go up here. You know, maybe some like little glow sticks here and there. Something like that. You know, we could just, doesn't have to be super detailed, especially right now. But this is just kind of an idea of like what to work with. Not bad. Okay, so lights. And I don't know, maybe a TV here or something. There we go. Something like that works. And I'm going to go ahead and reuse this background for when I draw on top of it. Actually, I'm going to put this a little closer to the screen. So if I just go back into the right layer and select everything, I'm just going to kind of do that. There we go. Alright, let's see. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, that's fine with me. Doesn't have to be perfect. Alright. Perspective isn't great, but, you know, we'll work with it. Make no thing. So, okay. I am fine with that then. Let's work on top. I made an extra layer. Alright, so at this point too, this is kind of the time when you want to start drawing your characters on top. So maybe I want to go ahead, it's kind of like planning out your keyframes, except even looser than that. So when I mean draw loose, I mean literally you could draw loose. Like you could draw as loose as you want. Especially in your first phase, I would not go too ham on trying to make things like super perfect or anything. Like I said with earlier at the beginning of this workshop, if you're doing TV, you generally want to clean things up pretty well. But I'm just going to go ahead and pretend it's a feature and not worry too hard about the details. So just putting down like just some base, just to kind of tell me this is Miku. Somehow forgot what she looks like, but maybe she's just dancing. She could be, let's see, it's kind of hard to figure out what I want to do for this one. Well, I'll do like this. Maybe I'll put her closer to the screen. This is kind of when your film language is going to be at play here, so you should worry personally less about the drawing and more about how you're going to be telling the story. So as you can kind of see here, I'm sort of struggling because I'm not really sure what a Hatsune Miku concert looks like, but I think we can work this out. Let's see, maybe she could be singing here. She's got like her little mic here. Thank you, I appreciate that. Maybe, yeah, she could be like singing here. Just kind of getting in the really basic shapes of her face. Like I said, I'm kind of having to design her too. Like I said, if you're working with like pre-existing characters or you have other artists, you won't have to do this as much, but in this case, you're gonna have to, so. Especially if you're working on your own portfolio and such. But you can always practice too with other people's characters too. It doesn't limit you, and it's actually also good to show in your portfolio that you're versatile with other characters or other character styles. So, like I said, nice to have vectors just kind of running around, you know. Just kind of filling the characters. And yeah, let's say this is it. Alright, so what we want to go ahead and do is we can literally just, I'm going to want to go ahead and duplicate the panel because I'm not going to change the background or anything. So you can also copy and paste over the background, but I think it's a little easier just to duplicate it. As you can see too, we're still within the same scene, so we haven't changed scenes or anything. You can always go back here and just click on something and add another one in that first scene, but in this case I'm just going to click here. Yeah, so this time I'm going to kind of do it similar to like a keyframe style. So I'm going to just have her kind of just move her head over. And then maybe, like I said, don't worry too hard about like getting everything accurate or anything, but try to keep it like vaguely readable. Like you can definitely be loose about things, but I wouldn't go so crazy that you can't like tell what you're drawing. It's kind of a fine balance with everything though, of course, so whatever is most comfortable for you, and as long as your team can read it, you're doing a good job. So yeah, just going back. Maybe just kind of moving the hand a little bit forward that way, so I could always draw an arrow here, show that. I forgot to draw that, but whatever. Anyway. Kind of showing that she's like moving a little bit too. And I can go ahead and just delete this layer too. And now you can kind of see, you just go back and forth, you can kind of see how she's moving. Like I said, it's very similar to a keyframe animation, especially when you're working with television per se versus maybe something like feature animation. But it's up to you really how you want to go ahead and do it. So you can just keep going ahead and drawing. Actually, I'm going to delete this. Right click, delete. copy and paste it over, and you can just go over and over and over. Or you can obviously too also just change the scene, so you can now maybe like, I don't know, you can switch it to this. And maybe, I don't know, you can go crazy with the perspective. I ain't gonna trouble myself too hard with how perfect it looks, but I'm like, it's like I'm there. But yeah. You can, like I said, I'm not doing it anything like super crazy or anything or making it look perfect. I'm literally just here to tell a story. So the perspective here isn't great. Like I said, if it was TV, I'm reiterating myself all over again, but it's important to know if it was TV, I would clean this up, make it look more on point. Otherwise, keeping it loose, keeping it like more flowy is the more important part. And just kind of, like I said, you can constantly mess with different like panels. You know, you can do a couple iterations. Like if I didn't like this iteration, I could do another one on top. And maybe I could do like her mouth or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the story of this is, so it's kind of more unclear how to draw it, but and maybe I can even bring back that BG and just kind of force it back in here. You can always manipulate it too, you don't have to keep it super stagnant, so yeah, maybe I like that one better than the other perspective one. And then if you just want to clean it up, all you gotta literally do is you could just go in, once you're done, just erase underneath it. It's super vector based though, so you're not gonna get like the most cleanest per se erases like you can get with raster, but it works pretty well enough, and you can tell where everything is, which is the most important part. As I said, it being readable is way more important than anything, than getting a really good drawing. It's just nice if you could do both. And yeah, just clean it up, clean it up. You can even go ahead and do fancy stuff if you want. Like I've seen artists who've done, oh, my bad, who've done like a, I'm gonna go ahead and select this area. I kept it on its own isolated layer. Oh, well, that didn't work. Oh yeah, because I need to be on the lasso tool. So if I use the lasso tool, after clicking the select button, it's gonna kind of finesse it. Why is it giving me issues? Okay. Oh wait. Well, okay, maybe not. Never mind. I thought you could do it that way too, but you can also just draw it in if you want. I'm just gonna do that. That's a little easier. But yeah, you can kind of make it look fancy-ish if you've ever seen storyboards online. Just kind of, they have like this nice, especially when you're using like perspective and stuff, maybe adding like a nice darker color to it. I think I might have drawn on top of it, but either way, I think the point stands. You can do a lot of fancy stuff with it. And then once you're done, you can either go to export here and you can export it as like a movie, or you can go into, if you didn't time anything out, you probably don't want to do that. If you want to just have it as a PDF layout, just go back into your PDF settings and just click, like I'll do profile, and I'll do, because we're working with Japanese Vocaloid, I'm just gonna export it as a Japanese format, and just click export, and it's gonna put it in my output, or it's gonna call it output PDF. And nice thing too is it also makes it super clean, so it shows you the title of your project and such. and it'll kind of show everything here, dialogue, action, slugging, notes. But now it kind of feels like a real storyboard. Super cool, and yeah, I highly recommend using this software because it's honestly one of my favorite softwares out there. Just, it's very well built. But yeah, is there any more questions regarding the software in general?
Nope.
Okay. But yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and just try out the software for yourself, you can go ahead and use the trial. I'll put I'll post the slides soon too, and also include the file to the storyboard template. I might not include all the extra stuff too, but yeah. If that's it, I'm gonna go ahead and end the tutorial. Thank you guys for showing up so much, and I hope you guys got to learn something out of it. And if you want to view the recording, it's gonna go and be available on our YouTube channel after the stream's over.
Hey, thanks, Yasmin.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much. I do apologize if I went through that a little quickly, but I hope that at least helps for a basic overview.
All good.
Sweet. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream now. Thank you guys so much.